Yeah, like okay, then let's go. Welcome, kid. So this is the first kind of coalition meeting um, that I've invited you to. We're just gonna present an idea and then just see what everyone thinks about it and if people are excited to continue something. Um, and I mean, we are missing a few people, but I guess we can do run introductions to start with. So I will start. I'm Jonathan. I am from Sweden, study computer science, been working a lot as a teacher, excited about technology and education and all this stuff. I've been working in Beijing now together with Molly, who's also here in the call, doing maker education in China. And yeah, that's about it. Nick. Nick,
What?
it's your turn. Who are you?
My turn. Well, I'm also Swede, and I'm currently in Stockholm, and I've been. I don't really know what else to say, really. Like, I'm doing a bunch of different kinds of things. My background is in mathematics, but I work in politics, I work in startups, I do, a bit of everything.
Cool. I guess I'll go next.
Yeah, Jaguar.
My name is Jaguar Christeller. I graduated from MIT last year. I'm in China working with Jonathan on education stuff, Jonathan and Molly. And I've always been really interested in tracking the evolution of ideas and somehow making a tool for helping grow your habits and understand what you're thinking. Yeah, I guess that's it.
All right. Dana, you want to go?
Sure, yeah. So yeah, I'm Dana. I also graduated from MIT about a year ago. I'm a Jaguar. So I'm really interested in trying to see if there's a way that we can put together a system for people to get credit that people can trust for providing valuable human-human interactions, like specifically education, although maybe other things, but like been focusing on education. And whether that can be done in a completely decentralized way that no one has to trust anyone else, and we can do like inference to make sure that people are actually keeping the promises that they're making. Basically, just so that we can start creating an economy around learning that isn't based on money, but is based on like actual credit and just accomplishment. So basically, I'm just really excited to see Jonathan's thing, which seems to be all about that. Yeah, it's really cool to be here. So thanks, Jaguar, for getting me.
Molly, you want to go next?
Hi, hello. I'm Molly. I was graduated from College of Art from London before. And before I have my kids, I was a designer, industry designer. But after I have like my own kids, I want to do something about education. So I started this company called Creatica, which is selling like a makerspace and a maker-related class to schools. But like recently, I'm kind of like getting tired of the whole like a business in this. Kind of feeling this doesn't go anywhere to this kind of like education I wish it could be. So kind of like a pause a little bit for the business and try something new right now. Yeah, and that's how I met with Jonathan. And we have been working together for quite a long time now. And yeah, we are looking for something new. Yeah.
Cool. And I guess the other people who are watching this recorded have to pitch in with their introductions later. But basically now I'm just gonna do this presentation for about half an hour, and then I'm gonna invite Nick to talk a bit about what he's been finding out in Stockholm, and then we can have an open discussion about this. Hopefully it works well with the connection and so on. So I think you guys can mute your microphones if you're in a public space or cafe, so it won't like add a lot of noise to the recording for the others that are watching later. So you just press this microphone thing in Google Hangout. Cool. Yeah, and just write anything, like just unmute your microphone and tell me if the connection is not good. Yeah, so basically, I'm not so happy with the current education either, as you might have figured already. So when I'm asked in Sweden, like what's the problem? I've been provoking my teacher colleagues a lot by in the coffee breaks in the school. I've been asking, or like, I'm thinking about homeschooling or unschooling my future children. And the response is something like, what, are you crazy? Like, what's wrong with the school? You don't trust the teachers? Wouldn't some children fall through the cracks if there wasn't compulsory education, and so on? And I've been thinking about this the last few days, and like, there's actually nothing wrong, at least like in Sweden, like there's nothing wrong with the school facilities. Like they're fine. Like there's a lot of equipments for learning, computers, music instruments, art rooms, everything. Like this, it's like playgrounds, sports arenas. Like there's nothing wrong with the facilities. The teachers, like vast majority of my colleagues that I've been working with, I would have no problem them taking care of my kids if I had any while I'm gone working. So the problem itself is basically there's no problem with anything within the schools. It's just the where decides what they're gonna do during the day, how the schedule looks like, and so on and so on. I mean, that is the problem. It's the education system problem, nothing with the facilities or the teachers itself. So I don't know, like, I mean, it looks different in every local context. I know in China and India, the education system has a lot more pressure on the kids, where you need to perform on these competitive tests for this only direction to a good life through the best universities and so on. And the US system, I'm not exactly sure about the current issues, but I mean, everyone has their local context, what the problem is. So around this problem, like, when I've been researching a lot of pedagogy, like what people are talking about now, it's like there is a lot of momentum in what people think education should look like and how it would be different. So for example, everything from entrepreneurs and investors like Naval Ravikant really recommend listening to a podcast by this guy. He's brilliant. So he's saying that when he asked about the education system, he says, I think there's no question it's completely obsolete. The education system is a path-dependent outcome from the need for daycare. And Molly said this a few days ago, that she, with her own daughter, she realized that, yeah, the reason school exists is just because people don't want to spend time with their kids all the time. I mean, they love their kids, but they don't want to spend time with them all the time. So it's a kind of glorified daycare, like Jaguar puts it. And then he also says, I have to believe that we can change the system, but you never change a system by taking the existing thing and reworking it. I've been in Silicon Valley and tech business long enough to know that you're better off changing it by just creating something brand new. So that's something that like tech people in Silicon Valley is saying. Then you have Sir Ken Robinson, who's famous for his TED Talks about education, who's saying the answer is not to standardize education, but to personalize and customize it to the needs of each child and community. And there is no alternative. And I also find that like you can also argue like there's no standardized people. So like why should we standardize education? I think that's a pretty good argument. Then you have Kristina, what's her name? Kumpulainen, Finnish, from Professor in Education, says, an interest in things is inherent to us humans, but it may be suffocated by the circumstances. If you're used to school forcing everyone into the same mold, you may not find anything of real interest to you. And I think this was something that relates to me when I was a child. Like I didn't really have any specific interest besides just going to computer games as the sort of escape from the school life. And last we have Sugata Mitra, one of my big role models in education, who's working in England now. He's originally from India. He's saying that it's quite fashionable to say the educational system is broken. It's not broken, it's wonderfully constructed. It's just that we don't need it anymore. And he keeps talking about how it's designed for the industrial era, and like it's actually producing these kind of factory workers just fine, but like we're not in that time anymore. So and then so my thesis is basically this, like from all these kind of pedagogical ideas, that like how can the latest technologies and design innovations be leveraged to build decentralized education systems to close the education gap? because some are having too much education, like what I'm seeing in China. You spend the whole week doing extracurriculars, and some just have not enough good education. And I'm really becoming a fan of this decentralized technology that we have seen emerging lately. So this is kind of the thesis that I sent as a potential presentation in Mexico next year to present at education conference. So we'll see if that goes through. So then it's about the technology. So there is momentum here as well, where we have software like Airbnb, where you can, and like Didi or Uber or OFO or Mobike here in China, how you can allocate physical resources with the help of software, like to help coordinate and fully utilize like resources that exist in the physical world. So I see that as one innovation we can repurpose for educational use. Then there is obviously big data and AI, which I'll come back to because it's a bit complicated when you work with children, I think. But the kind of machine learning you can do on big data is, I mean, it's pretty amazing and also scary at the same time. And then we also have YouTube or online content. There's so much content online. And in Sweden, we had this flipped classroom thing where teachers are starting to put their lectures on YouTube, because the kids then should watch them home as homework, and then they do assignments in the classroom instead of doing them at home when you have no support. And I actually just found this physics guy as I was looking for a print screen for the slide, but I actually started watching this for a long time because I thought it was actually hilarious. YouTube, I can't why do you need to have a half-decent teachers in the village somewhere in the north of Sweden when you can just watch these fantastic teachers online? And they must exist in every local language, I imagine. And then we also have hardware that's coming out to people that don't really have access to quality education. You have one laptop per child from MIT who has built this really robust laptops that I've been doing some research on them. I think it's quite fantastic what they've done. So a lot cheaper hardware that is still connected is coming out to people that don't really have good quality education. And that's everyone who has a window to the internet can access whatever I'm going to suggest now. So I think that's crucial to get devices out to people who don't have any other resource for learning. And then last, we have blockchain technology that has come the last decade or so, where we started with Bitcoin. It's the first application of blockchain. I see Dana is very excited about this, obviously, Jaguar as well. So this is very tech heavy for those who's not into programming and this stuff. But blockchain basically is, how can we, instead of having decentralized servers, how can we decentralize data and decision making and most things, instead of having one person in control? If one owns the data, one can also decide whose data I will remove. If you're playing a big online game, the people who own the game can just remove your avatar or whatever if they're not happy with how you perform. And if this would be your bank account in the real world, that's a whole bigger problem, So the reason why blockchain here is key, and you can see is basically, so big data and education, why blockchain tech is key is because one of my friends started working at Google in Shanghai recently, and she told me that if I go to Google and I can check my activity, I can basically see exactly all the data they have tracked on me. So here's some screenshot I did a few days ago where they can see, oh, you watch these things on YouTube, you open this app on Android, you did this, you search for this about Hangout in order to how to facilitate this talk. And it can go into detail, which made me really freak out. It's actually changed my browser and my search engine. Because this kind of freaks me out. But the reason it does is or let's come back to children first. It's so kids online using YouTube, all these things, they're collecting a lot of data about children. And so I think Google's income is between 70 and 90% is from ads. So if you own data, you can make, the way you translate data into money is through targeted advertisement, right? And we I met Nick and Sid, who's going to watch this later, and Della, who's going to watch this later. Who else? I met a bunch of people from the book club at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, where we've been reading a book now called Weapons of Math Destruction, about the dangers of big data. So one example in the book is how through your data streams, they can kind of figure out if you are one of the lower income class in society or one of the upper. So basically, if they detect in your data that you're not well educated and you have low income, they will they will give you targeted ads for really low quality for profit universities that then make money that you take a federal student loan that you can't pay back, and you get a shit education which is not going to get you a job. So I mean, when we do this for kids, like, we don't want targeted ads to be something that is provided for children as an audience, because that is just not ethically right. So that's why, like, storing data on blockchains, letting the users and own their own data is so important. Where someone is in control of the data, even if it would be us, it's kind of hard to argue, like, we could, like, well, you're just going to monetize the data after. If you create a system where they know it is that they own the data themselves, like, they will feel more safe about it. So I hope that makes sense. You can read in more on it online if you think this is interesting. So about all these technologies that I presented before, like, how can you repurpose them for education, and how can they potentially fit together? So I presented now this kind of software/service stack of how this would kind of connect. So starting with the backend, we have this decentralized credential system, or Dana called it something different, I don't remember, which basically would be tracking your formal and informal learning using blockchain technology to track and store this data, or at least to store it. Then there would be some kind of need for an API or some kind of way to easily get data into this backend to, like, I'm not sure how this is gonna work. I think Dana can maybe talk about this later sometime later. But basically, if you have an app like you're using Duolingo to learn Chinese or Spanish, like, how can you get that data to store on your account on this platform, or like any other data from any other formal learning thing? Because now usually all the things you have is formal learning. You have certificates from schools, graduation certificates, or whatnot. So, like, how can we get more informal learning data on this platform? So then is the next layer is, like, how to visualize this data. It's the first kind of front end layer of, like, what do the users see? And Jaguar has this idea that he's been working on or thinking a lot about, that is like a sort of a graph for visualizing and tracking your learning and your thinking between different conversations or topics or whatnot. So this is about tracking and showing learners their progress, and also be able to show others your skills. So show others what your credentials are. Like, you can use this visualization to show a place you want to go intern or work or study. Like, this is what I know. This that maybe doesn't show on, like, a school graduation diploma, but, like, here is my informal learning too. Like, I know a lot more than says on my diploma, for example, and you can check it out here. So sort of like a way to show your credentials, and also for yourself to also keep track of. We'll come to that later, but also keep track of what you have learned and so on. Then we have this layer of, so what is in orange is basically things that already exists. So we have these free and cheap online resources, content online, Khan Academy, YouTube lectures, like I presented earlier. You have MOOCs, language learning apps. You have books online. Order a book on Amazon or whatever. And then also exists, so that's like content. Like, if you want to learn a topic, you can find it there. But then you also have different platforms to give you ask you big questions, like, that you can't answer with a Google search. Like, can trees think? Which will need you to explore topics like biology and psychology and neuroscience and so on to answer that question. And then you can write an article about your answer, which would count as some kind of informal learning, because you have kind of completed this kind of challenge or problem. You also have, like, competitions. I know there's a lot of as a there is there's a lot of these kind of things to motivate you. Like, so basically you have these challenges that will motivate you, but then you have the content to help you learn the things you need to complete the challenge. These can work in different ways, but this is kind of things that already exist that I feel like we as a coalition not we could work on this, but also it exists a lot of it out there. We just need to find a way how to use it. The next layer would be another kind of backend, which would be very machine learning and AI heavy, which is basically locating and matching physical and online resources. So you have people and spaces and content. So this would connect learners with each other, with mentors and suitable spaces in their local physical context, as well as learning content. And also hopefully to try to create incentives for people to come together. So either voluntarily or professionally. So like if you have a language group locally, how can you like incentivize people to go there to learn together? Because people have found out from research, like MOOCs don't really have a lot of retention because you sit there alone on your computer trying to solve these problems. And also, I mean, the motivation to study a language, if you just do it by yourself, but if you can go to a language cafe and talk to other people, like you'll be a lot more motivated. So how can you kind of find these local resources and also online resources and then match them to the learner? That's the kind of second back-end layer. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, Minna has something like this in mind. That's hopefully we'll hear from later. So then comes the next thing, which is the front end for this kind of machine learning thing, where the learners kind of set their own goals and then they receive suggested resources, which can be online content or physical spaces close to them, or even peers or local teachers that they can pay an hourly rate to attend their class. And then learners can also share their and see others' learning graphs. So basically, if you can find someone, or give me an example of like, if you want to find a way towards a dream profession, like I want to be a mechanical engineer, if you can type that in and see other mechanical engineers that already achieved that goal, how did I reach that goal? Or I want to see like, how does someone learn to speak Mandarin? Then I can search for Mandarin. I can see examples of other people who have achieved that goal. And ideally, it can show you like this the resource they used. Some of them are available for you, some not. But here are some possible replacements, and so on. So it's a way for people to kind of find out their goals. It can be big goals or small goals. And then basically the next layer is like the meat layer of like the who will use this front end search engine. So we have the glorified daycare, which is traditional schools. They could be using this. I mean, if teachers want to help personal education for students, this would basically interesting. Like how can we incentivize teachers to kind of get on this thing instead of I mean, how can we incorporate this tool in the school as it is? Because we don't want to work only against it. We want to change it from within, if possible, too. If it can be that awesome that like if you start using this in school, like there's no reason to go, but like you will question why you use the actual national curriculum instead of this curriculum that is customized. And then I'm a big fan of self-directed education, where you have things like Agile Learning Centers and Studberry schools, which is one close to Boston. And then you have unschoolers that homeschooling without curriculums, for example. These are people that will be very, very like excited about this kind of system, I think, because they are actually doing this, but without any really powerful tools to help them. They mainly rely on local facilitators to be the ones that can help to show the opportunities, and so on. And then we have like those who don't go to these kind of institutions, like if they just can have access to a hardware device, like one laptop per child. In China, Levono has this $100 laptop, or probably even cheaper. You have Kano Computers in England, who's doing these cheap Raspberry Pi kits. And also just a growing number of mobile first users around youth. It's like, I mean, a lot of young people everywhere getting, oh, it's a bit choppy, okay. Hopefully, maybe I'll slow down a bit. Yeah, so getting these devices out to children on the countryside, for example, so they can access these kind of systems that can help them to find learning opportunities. And then last but not least, I mean, this is nothing that needs only to be used by children. There's no reason why this cannot be used by adults or by corporations wanting to help their employees continue to learn, because like if you don't learn, your skills will be outdated in five years, you know. So it's kind of like a need for professional development too. So there's a lot to think about, different possibilities to use this. So this is all very crazy and messy, this kind of visualization. So I want to show you, like, Jaguar has this more visualization idea about this. So I kind of taken this idea and adapted it in my own way. So this is not like, I will explain a bit more later, but so one example would be, this is the version 1, the first front-end version of showing your credentials. So this is a student who has been learning a bit of computer games, then decided they want to try out some pixel art because they maybe were inspired by Minecraft. Then they picked up a Wacom tablet and Photoshop to do some more advanced art. And they ended up going to a formal art class later because they were very excited about it. So here are the big kind of things that are more formal experiences. And then maybe they also went from computer games, they got interested in coding and did some online tutorials. They got into physical coding with Arduino projects and published a product on Instructables. And then maybe even attended a local competition where they did an IoT project, for example. Where they got like that, so that's a formal kind of achievement, like you finished a competition, you won a prize. So here you can show like, this is the things I know. It includes informal and formal learning as well. And then you can, or I mean, I don't know, I mean, I guess it counts as formal learning. And then the next version will be more like a personalized goals and curriculums. So here I added this kind of search bar thing. So for example, they put in Spanish, like I want to learn Spanish. Then this algorithm of machine learning to find opportunities for you would basically give you something like this. Like you can, first you can check out these YouTube tutorials for beginner Spanish. And then when you have done that for a while, I suggest you go to a local language cafes, which have meetings on Tuesday at 4 p.m. When you feel confident there, you can also hire a local tutor for this price. Here is their contact information. And when you feel ready, you can do the DLE test. Like for the first level, you can do an exam to get some formal credentials for your learning, which is happening in this city near you on this date. So this can be like here's a suggested personal curriculum for you to learn Spanish. And then you have also, for example, another way of the front end thing could be also be to explore career options. So if I type mechanical engineer, then it will, looking on your previous experiences, it will give you a kind of personalized path to what you can do. Like this is just really quick examples, but like from your Arduino projects, you could join a robot team and attend competitions because it's related to hardware and coding. From there on, maybe you want to do a 3D CADing to a finished project where you will use a lot of tools that are connected to mechanical engineering. If you want to go to university, you need to take an SAT and then you can apply, or you can apply to intern, and there's some volunteer mentors from the industry who would be happy to Skype with you, for example. So this could be, I mean, this can look very different. This is just an example, but just to get you the idea of what this could look like for the user. But in Jaguar's idea is basically this one level of detail. You can put the details on a higher level by saying I only want to show these big circles, which is formal things like went to university, took an art class, won this prize, have finished this level in Spanish, product on Instructables on your CV. So you can do that level of detail for example, when you want to apply for or when you want to do the level of a CV. But then you can even go down like lower than this in level of detail, where like you can see your like emails you've sent, journaling you have written, message to your friends, or like, I mean, you can analyze data on a whole different level when the technology is ready for handling that kind of thing, because now the back end of blockchain is quite limited in its capacity for doing transactions. Like it's not quick enough to do this on a very detailed scale. But as technology progresses, it will be able to reach that point. But I want Jaguar to talk more about this later when he has time. Anyway, so here we can see like this basically replaces a lot of things that exist in education systems today. So you have personal goals, like I want to learn Spanish or I want to become a mechanical engineer. You have different career path suggestions by your goal. You have your proven skill. So it has a lot of different key points that you would like to have from an education system, visualized clearly. That would be a good thing. So this is not something that is set in stone. It's an idea of mine, and I mean, I would need feedback and criticism, and this needs to go through a lot of iterations to reach its full potential. So this is not something that like this must happen exactly like this. It's just it's just an idea we can play around with. So that's why you guys are here. Because you can't just do good things one person, I think. So that brings me to the coalition. So like, what is this coalition I'm talking about? Basically, I realized that solving big problems like this, you can't just create like one company that will solve this massive problem with a company approach. I think ideally you want to involve like NGOs, some companies developing tools, some university departments doing research, maybe some local school districts that want to try this out. I mean, there's a lot of different people that would go into testing out something like this and developing something like this. So for me, it doesn't make sense to have this only as like a traditional company structure. That's kind of why I've been thinking about it would be better to do it as a coalition between different people who all have their own passion projects, and we just find a way to fit them together in a way that it can be very useful to a lot of people. So we can build something bigger together. So the idea is then like, how do we work together? Well, I was thinking that we need to have some kind of shared vision or goal where we can basically crowdsource a manifesto of some sort. And I've done a quick example here, things that I'm not sure if you would agree on or not, but it's just an example for what it could look like. So having things like children should have choice in what they learn. We believe that intrinsically motivated learning is more powerful than extrinsic motivation. And we value informal learning as much, if not more, than formal learning. And when technology makes us question the roles of humans, the learner need to find meaning in their lives. And it can go on and on with different things of like what we think is important when it comes to education, and things that we can all sign on to and work together with this as our core and our core vision that we work towards. So we never lose track of that. And I found this American NGO called Education Reimagined. I read their kind of vision yesterday. Go to the page and read that. Click this link or just type it in and then press the button called Read the Vision. It's a few pages, but like when I read that, I basically see like all the things that they're saying they support is things that are included in this project. It feels like what this idea that I presented to you is basically the answer to their vision. So I see that as like, it's a very interesting thing to run because we're building practical things for people who already have the wish to have these tools. So they sort of have a manifesto on this already that we can use and get inspired by. And then to have a coalition that is across borders, that exists in different, like now we're people here from Boston, from Stockholm, from Beijing. Then we have people who might be watching later located in Bombay or in London or maybe in the West Coast in the States as well. So if we have a very distributed team, a decentralized team, so to say, we need to have a way to do asynchronous meetings. Like we cannot meet like this all the time, but ideally we could meet like this from time to time. But there's tools like Slack, Loomio, Google Hangouts. So this is what Loomio looks like. It's like a decision-making tool where you basically give, here's the question, or like here's a problem, give some suggestions, vote on them, discuss them, come up with better solutions, and then get a clear outcome on what the decision was and what we do now together. And basically tracking all of the decisions that was made and so on. Like these platforms can really be helpful for coalitions like ours to work. And then there's the thing like, so to build something big like this, you would need investments or donations. So I think it's interesting that the usual investment ways, like you invest in a company, you want to get return on investment. But what if you invested in like the vision of this coalition as like the goal they want to achieve and the collaborative tool they want to build together? What if you invest in that and then the coalition itself makes a decision on how the money should be spent, depending on what time in the development phase we're in right now? So I see this as a very interesting way that I want to discuss with some people about how this kind of investment model, does it make sense for investors or foundations and so on. And I think there's a bunch of investment opportunities for something like this that Nick will talk a bit about later. But this is also something that we need to think about, how we can be innovative about investment if we want to do this across organizations. Yeah. What's next? So next, basically, I want to invite Nick to speak a bit about his findings from his own kind of lurking around research, going to different initiatives and meetings and conferences. And then I want to invite to an open discussion. So just asking, am I totally insane, or is this something that could be good? It's off, and Nick, want to have a go? Fair enough. Turn on your microphone. Let's see.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now.
Yeah, I was too excited, so I started talking when I was on mute. Anyways, I should begin by saying that what you have just presented is something that I find really, really inspiring and really exciting to work on. It's definitely the kind of product that I would want to have. And that should tell you something, because that's not something that is offered here right now. And this is how I've been going about in my life, in whatever I've been pursuing, whether it's been going for work, whether it's been learning new skills and so forth. And I think it's really something that is a game changer if it could be implemented. So I will be very brief. There are, as Jonathan mentioned, many different opportunities for this thing to actually take off. It's one thing to say, oh, it's a big idea, but maybe we can't really implement it. I am here to tell you that from my experiencing, talking to different kinds of people and listening in and reading and so forth, that this is really the time to go for it. So, for example, last week I attended a 3-day summit where you had the Indian government coming and visiting Sweden, and you had all of these different ministers, business leaders, and so forth visiting, and all that they really talked about was education and the need to invest in education and for lower level skills. And you had all of these different companies, Swedish companies that are investing and going heavy into India and going into China too. That says that 2 out of 3 of those consider skill, or the skill gap, to be the biggest issue that they are facing. So what they have done is that they have set up CSR, corporate social responsibility, as some of their sort of main tenets of their businesses, meaning that they are investing heavily into building skills, and they're looking for different kinds of products that could target these things. So not only would you be able to find sort of funding from usual NGOs and other kinds of things, companies now, they recognize that this is something that is of absolute necessity in order to build the next middle class, the emerging middle class in China and in India. Which, I mean, just to give you some, I at least thought it was mind-boggling to realize that India now, like 89% out of its population, that consists of 1.3 billion, 89% of those make less than $2,300 a year. And so 600 million other people don't have electricity 24/7. The challenges are massive, and basically what the minister were telling us, and in talks, I was fortunate to just go up and just have a brief conversation, was that any kind of effort going into education, targeting people, bringing in radical solutions would be welcome. And this is something that I haven't heard before, coming from India, or indeed maybe from China, because I will not spend as much time on China, given that we have other experts here on China that are more sort of knowledgeable on it. But I would imagine that they have the same sort of problems if you go more towards the West, in third-tier cities. And so what you're seeing here is a willingness politically. So what they have done now is that they are setting up initiatives, making it much easier for foreigners, for example, to access the country, to coming in, getting investment, getting more importantly, getting mentorship. So that you can actually realize, okay, where should I be going, and who should I be talking to, who are the people to trust, and so forth. Legal advice, all of these different things are now coming about to help young entrepreneurs or young individuals who want to contribute. And all that they're asking for is really these good ideas. And I can tell, I mean, I wasn't bold enough to sort of, this was sort of just in the pipeline to like stick up my hand and say, look, what about this idea? But I'm absolutely confident that they would have jumped on it, because that was the mood amongst the people. And like I said, as well, with if you talk to different companies as well. So you could be speaking to Ericsson. I was speaking to the chairman of Ericsson, AstraZeneca, and so forth, and he was saying, like, I was just floating this idea. What about building a decentralized education system, targeting the most needed? Because one of the things that is very interesting in the presentation that Jonathan just gave us is really that it's so radical. And like I said at the beginning about the Swedish education system, like the Swedish education system, there's not really something that you would see as wrong if you just study it and you look at the different aspects. It seems to so be working, but we know that it doesn't work. Jonathan and I know, at least, like if you go through the Swedish education system, it doesn't work. It doesn't work out at all. And this is one of the richest, most prosperous countries in the world with all of its resources, and we can't pull it off. Yet introducing this idea, I think, would be very difficult because it's so well established. Like, we have already the prestige game. We already have sort of the mechanisms by which you are supposed to go through life here. And so that's why I think that it really comes down to introducing it to people who don't have any system whatsoever, those that are the most needed. Because for them, I mean, it's not really much of a choice. Like, the current system doesn't serve them anyway. So they and the people who are governing them now are in a situation where they are prepared to sort of take a leap of faith, go out there and actually explore. And that's exactly what we need, because what we're trying to do here, I think, is to really leapfrog. Think of it, like this could be the ignition of really leapfrogging, creating a middle class of the size of the Americas in terms of population. The Indian government told me, like, they are up till 2020 trying to create programs to educate or update the educational skills of 500 million people. That's the entire population of Europe. You think, like, so in terms of scale and all of these other things, and you have the same with China, where you're seeing massive skill gaps emerging, especially in the West, in the western part of China, which sort of fuels the income inequalities that we see. And so it's not as though, like, there are many different avenues that you could go as well in doing investments. One of the things that we have started out quite a lot here in Europe now is like social impact entrepreneurship. So we have something called Norrsken, or the Northern Light, which is this new interesting venture where basically you're looking to create the next social, like, impact unicorn factory. So it's not about just making profit, although profit could come down the line, but to really invest in ideas that are changing and improving the lives. So profit has sort of been swifted from being solely monetary into impact. And these guys are sitting on billions of dollars, basically cumulatively, and they're just waiting for this next idea. That's the thing. And you have many different solutions now coming out in the edtech scene, but more or less all of them are targeting the top 1% or the well-off, like the people who already have the motivation just to go to the next step. If we could be the ones instead that say, look, what we want to do is that we want to take these wonderful ideas and we want to sort of propel them right into an area that sort of has nothing of this whatsoever, we can really distinguish ourselves. And I am confident that this is an idea that would fly with whomever we were to be presenting it to. And so I could go into more to details, but that was basically sort of the thing I wanted to inject here, that this is something that I sort of, first time I started considering it, I said, like, is this really, like, can this really be realized? Can I actually play any sort of part in it? And what I've come to recognize now, after some reflection, after some reading, and more importantly, after talking to the stakeholders involved, is that yes, and it's not just that we can do it. I think we are actually the only one who would be able to do it, because they are not thinking in these terms. They are too stuck in the traditional mode. They haven't really figured out what is really needed. All they realize, they can recognize that there is a problem, but then their solution is just to improve on the current system. So that's what they're fueling their money with. So you will have CEOs' wives take on and create schools, and that's great. Like, they create their small schools, but they're not run with result driven. The thing that I think that we would be very much into doing here, like to create high impact education, things that would take these kids to learn not necessarily a particular skill, but to learn just to learn, which is a much more valuable skill. Like that we will teach them how they can acquire new skills. and surprisingly, this is not something that they have really discovered themselves. What most will be still talking about is that how can we just teach them the skills that we think will be needed, rather than to recognize the fact that we don't really know what is going to be the future or what is going to be evolving in these different communities. All that we can really do is to prepare them just to be able to acquire new sets of skills, whether it is to be a farmer, or whether it is to run a shop, whether it is to go to educate, like to higher education and become a doctor. Like, it's all comes down though to the methods that you acquire and that you can grow as a person. And those skills are currently not being fueled into this society at all. And as a result, there's going to be a ceiling as to how far they can go and grow. And I think that our responsibility, or like that's my work, I feel sort of a calling in this sense, that I think that we could make a difference in the long run. It's a massive project. It's probably one of the biggest projects that you can ever undertake in terms of being part of really igniting, as I said, and being part of creating this new middle class in Asia, in the western part of China, and in India, to start off with. and so we're talking about probably 1 billion people at least, that the potentials are out there. So all I would be saying is that I think that funding, all of these other things, if we could just get going on some sort of idea, like materializing it a bit more sharply, and these things is something that I could pick up the phone today and just get going with, just finding different avenues to get this into a reality. So yeah, I could have discussions or other things, but that was basically what I had to say on this, Jonathan, unless you want me to go more specific. Can you hear me, Jonathan?
Oh, no, I think it's good. It's perfect. So I can hear you. Can you?
Yes.
All right. So yeah, the floor is everyone's. I mean, yeah, you can unmute your microphones if you want to speak, or raise your hand, or whatever. I think it's good if one person talk at a time and say their thoughts for a while, so we don't talk because of the delay. It's a bit so. Who wants to go first and do some comments on this? Gregor, Dana, Molly?
Okay, well, so this is all very new to me, and there's a lot of things that I could comment on. So if I just reach out into this world of possible things that we're considering, I hope I can hit something that's reasonably coherent. But yeah, I'd be willing to talk about it for a minute if you want, and how what I've been thinking about doing might fit into the grander scheme here. So this is really exciting. Right. It's exciting to find out about how much fuel there is to burn around here, off the ground. My focus up to this point has been on figuring out how to make a system that doesn't require fuel, that will just be entirely run by itself in a decentralized fashion, that essentially would be able to work without development funding either, or any particular kind of government organization interest, that it really would require some open source work and some real volunteer effort from people who care a lot about this, but that it wouldn't require billions of dollars to deploy. I think that's still a good idea. I think it's kind of like we're going to have this, what I view to be an extremely important cornerstone issue here, which is that people need to get credit for what they've done. If we can deploy that in such a fashion that it wants to exist in its own way in the world, wants to people involved to accredit other people, and it all wants to be there. And even if you were to remove all the rest of this system from it, it would still keep going, being some kind of accreditation system. I think that's a really good place to be. I think you want your pieces, your architectural components, to be separable in a sense. You can build, and this is why this is a coalition, right? This is love this. It's really going great.
Right.
To be able to build a system for accreditation, and then that thing, it can just go exist. And then to go build this visualization tool, and using this concept of an interface and an API to say that this is the way that this should interact, right? We can say that in order for this educational system to progress, we have this this system of visualization tools that then plug into this credentials database, and we'll pull information out from them, maybe do some AI and like machine learning on it, and then go ahead and put that out into the world in such a way that it actually influences that system and causes it to gain more momentum and you know, continue to feed on itself. It's essentially balancing economic motives, and it's unfortunate to think about it that way, but I believe if we want to make this thing like really skyrocket and just go everywhere and impact a lot of people's lives, you need to make it so that it's economically viable for them to stop whatever they're doing and start investing time into this thing they don't even understand or recognize. I'm going to stop there for a second. I have many feelings and thoughts and just like, but I want to make sure I'm still on track with what everyone else is. But yeah, that's where I'm starting.
Cool. Anyone else want to share some thoughts?
I mean, I guess that means that I should probably say something, but I don't know. I'm just really happy.
That's good enough.
I guess going off of what Dana was saying though, like with each piece being separable but networked together in like the coalition thing, but making them so that each pillar can stand on its own kind of thing. I like that idea, and I guess I can explain more how the visualization tool could kind of stand on its own more. Wait first here. So the way I was thinking about it was like it's basically bringing all of the data back to the person, because the data is essentially you, and so when you give all that data, when you give all that control of the data to like Google, then you're essentially giving them control of you. But then like so you can read your mind with this data, and right now the data knows more about me than I do, and I want to use that data to help improve myself. And so I want to make this tool to help me just improve myself. And so by making this kind of nice packaged tool, I'm thinking that can spread as its own kind of thing. And then you have this network of people that have all this tool, and then you can be like, oh wait, this is a great way to actually know what you think about everything, like to assess what you know. And then from there you can be like, so these are all like the professionals that use this tool, and then down to the school level you can like make a more accurate goal, or like instead of saying you need to learn this much math and this much science and this much social studies, you can be like, okay, this is what you want to get to, this is mechanical engineer, like this is what they know and this is what they do, and this is like how much, this is like a graph of what they've done. So that includes like relationship building and all that stuff, and that's kind of where I'm running out of steam.
I think it's actually the thing you said about like the data knows better than I do. I read an article online. There was someone who lawyer pulled their data, and they received pages of data. Like, that is insane. This data, your person you want to date off, be funny. That shows we know that anyone else. I think we all come with different perspectives. It's better, so different. Do you want to say you is Jenny there with you? been working with a school with migrant athletes about figuring out like what kind of job they would be comfortable with, and also like how realistic jobs and they might going to finishing high school and going to university. I think by getting a more service job instead of going to university. So she's exploring now these children and like how can you find their motivation with talking more honestly with them about the future of the work and so on. Talk a bit about that, Molly. Okay, maybe another time. Yeah. Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Kind of late. I mean, you need to send her to bed.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think the thing we want to build kind of like very like a big and complicated. So just wondering like how can we start it? It's either from like the user side or if from the certificate side. But so if like you need to have like two ends. One end is where does the user coming from? And that will be very different if we targeting at different kind of groups. For example, like the migrant kids I'm targeting right now, I found is very different from the kids we're working with at ISB or北大附中, those kind of like middle class kids. They have like a totally different kind of needs there, and her, and this age, it's also very different. So I think you understand which either we have a very stable kind of group, we can track them for years, and then we can know like the end result of that, or we doing like the end result at the first. We're doing this like a kind of like a certificate side first to let the people or any kind of like organization saying like we say this is okay for this kind of system instead of those normal way of education first, and then to trying to persuade like more users trying to join the game. So just wonder like which side to start with, because we cannot like start the whole platform right away. Yeah, so also like every country has its own like situation right now, and think how complicated China is, and we can imagine how complicated like the whole world is. So if we are gonna build something like a universal for every country, then maybe try to find what is actually in common at the very beginning, and try to make something like a very small, very easy to start with. Yeah, I think that would be the next step. Yeah, I really need to send her to bed now.
Yeah. Thank you so much. But I actually just a quick answer on that. I think like I feel like it's good you come with a designer's perspective, because like you always need to think about the end user. And in my own point, it's like, I mean, Dana is already working on that top layer of things, and I think that it will be possible to fund more developers to get funding only to fund that, but then of course to be used as well, because it's a global thing to be used. But I think that starting with getting devices to children, like starting from the same time, you can still try to have local curators, select a lot of them give enough and through an algorithm, like they can just provide a document, like here is some local possibilities that you can explore that are outside of school. Like here's some tutors, here's some museums, here's some language groups, whatever. You can manually kind of try to get this data just as it works if the children are interested in this and so on. So I definitely think that we need to think about, like, yeah, like where do we start, and if, because like Nick said, we need to be result driven, so we need to see data on like, so when we develop the tools as developers, we know to use that data from designers on the field and like incorporate that into the, I think both like those two, the extremes, like the devices that children have and the data we get from there, and the back end layers, I think goes together like this somehow. This is of course a lot of discussion. Yeah. So basically, I'm thinking for, I don't know if this timing works. Someone knows that the next Monday, because now basically Dana is 8 in the morning. Dana, did you say something? Sorry, my connection is not so good. Okay. Yeah, but so my thinking is like, if now Dana it's quite early in your morning and it's quite late for us in Beijing, so I think this time is like ideal for us to meet. We're kind of excluding the American West Coast and Silicon Valley, because I think they have like 5, 6 in the morning. But we don't have anyone in the team besides Phil that invited us as a possible advisor for us. So I was thinking to have the same time next Monday to continue this discussion and have someone else present what they're working on. And I was thinking maybe Dana, if you're interested in taking that space and talking more in detail about what you're doing and so on. And then the time after, maybe the Monday after that, have Minna in Beijing, who's doing some research at Tsinghua, have her present her kind of passion project as well, what she wants to be working on, and slowly get to know each other, and kind of, we should set up a Slack channel to communicate over, to get to know each other better and discuss this kind of big problems of where do we start to get ideas for funding and so on that could fit into this coalition. Or so this has to be an ongoing discussion to get to know each other better. So I think I would like to schedule if someone would be willing to present something they're working on then. What do you think, Dana? Is it possible next Monday?
I'd be more than happy to do that. That sounds like a really exciting thing, and I'd love to see how my idea of what's going on here actually meshes well with what other people are doing at like a lower level, not just the global level. So yeah, totally.
Cool, fantastic. Yeah, I don't really have anything else. I guess we should get on with our day and do cool things that we'll do. Do you have any? Sorry, what were you saying?
Exact same time, 1 week from now.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So you have to set your alarm clock early again. But I was thinking if we should find a different way to communicate more. Maybe not Loomio is needed now, but do you guys use Slack by any chance? Have you experienced using Slack?
Yep.
Jaguar has used Slack, sort of. Nick, any experience using Slack? Sorry, you need to put your mic on.
I haven't.
You have not? Okay, and Molly has used Slack, but I think it's a super good thing. And also, we can also, if we use Loomio, we can also incorporate that into Slack. So I think it seems like a good communication tools to be using. So we'll take up a Slack channel and send it out in an email to get the recording to everyone who wasn't here. Yeah, and I guess I'll see you in the Slack channel and next Monday. Thanks for attending, everyone, and yeah, we'll see where this goes.
I'm so thrilled.
Any last words? Thrilled? Jaguar's happy? Nick, what are you feeling?
I'm happy.
You're happy. Good. Happy is a Yeah, but yeah, Jaguar, you can figure out the recording later, and we'll upload it to YouTube so everyone can watch it.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool. Have a good day, night, afternoon, everyone.
Sweet.
And
Take care.
have a good evening.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.